The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, hello everybody, hope you're doing great. And once again, before we actually begin, may I just ask you to prove that you can hear me and you can see the picture on your monitors, just to make sure that everything is configured properly and we can actually begin the taproom. Also, please let me know if sound quality is not really good, and probably I can do something with it. You can just drop the message into the chat box or into the questions box, for example. Okay, once again, guys, can you hear me? Okay, great. Received a couple of confirmations. So yeah, let's actually begin. Our today's taproom topic will be basically a couple of advices and how to minimize downtime after blackouts, after like any emergency situations that happen to your StarWind cluster. It doesn't really matter should you have your PSU that failed on you, or should it be like the total blackout in the data center. Sometimes it happens, and it's better be to prepared for such situations. So my name is Vlad. As always, I'm solutions engineer in StarWind software, and let's begin our today's taproom. So once again, our today's topic will be just like a couple of advices, a couple of steps that should be done, whether you have a blackout or any disaster in your data center. So without further ado, let's actually continue to the test environment. So to show you the simultaneous shutdown of two hosts, I have prepared the test setup. Basically, this is an asset virtualization. We have the actual physical cluster here, and these two virtual machines, HPV01 and HPV02, are Windows Server 2016 virtual machines with StarWind installed on top of them. So basically we are treating those machines as the actual physical servers. Let's RDP onto them. So this is the HPV1, and as you can see, we have StarWind already configured. We have just one CSV device and one witness drive to eventually create the failover cluster. And this is the actual failover cluster on top of these two virtual machines. So this is totally an asset configuration. It only has these two drives, nothing more. Any roles are configured. So I will just show you how failover cluster will react in case if you have just like two nodes, majority option. So when two nodes will die, you will not be able to connect to this cluster. And after like at least one of StarWind servers will be up and running, so the witness drive actually will be able to inform cluster that, yeah, one node is up. So after that, we will be able to connect to the failover cluster. Okay, so let's actually proceed to our physical cluster and kind of simulate the shutdown of two nodes. So right now we're doing something like the typical blackout. So I'm not going to do a gentle shutdown. I will just like turn off both nodes simultaneously right now. So bam, and they're dead. So that's what usually happens when you do not have any redundant power supplies, when you just like have your just servers without anything, and like the total building goes out of electricity. And after that, like let's assume that a network administrator or the server administrator just like rushing onto the server room, like does kind of the operations to return the power supplies, and after that he will actually start up the servers, the StarWind nodes. So in case if two servers have been shut down simultaneously in the same time, we can start with, like, it really doesn't matter from which server we'll start. We can turn on the first node, we can turn on the second node. The reason is that StarWind will automatically detect whether two servers are up and running, and after that it will perform synchronization automatically. In case if you will bring online just one server, let me meanwhile start the first server here. So in case if you will start just one server, StarWind will not mark the device on this server as synchronized, which means that your clients will not be able to instantly connect to the only node that is alive. So that's been done because there are some situations when, for example, we did not lose two servers simultaneously, but we have lost the first server, and after like a couple of minutes or in half an hour we are losing the second one. In this case, the second server has the recent data and has the actual data. And since the first server has been already dead, it just doesn't have this data at all. And in case if we are going to power on the first server in that particular scenario and forcefully mark the devices in this server as synchronized, obviously we will lose the data, because after this, even if the second server comes up online, StarWind will prepare the synchronization using the first server as the source one. So mostly administrator just really doesn't need to do anything. He just needs to put two servers online and wait a couple of minutes after the StarWind services are up and running on both nodes. So our HPV01 is up and running now, and we're going to double check what is happening right now on this server. Okay, take some time to load the environment. Yeah, by the way, this is the answer on like the multiple questions regarding should we support the newer version of Windows, will we support the Microsoft Windows 2016, and as you can see, actually, yeah. So right now I'm just running StarWind on top of Technical Preview 4, and really nothing bad happens yet. So I'm starting the StarWind console. Hopefully the StarWind service is up and running already. So as you can see, we have two devices. Their health status is obviously not really nice looking, as they just lost all connections to the partner. And that's what I said. By default, when we bring online only one of the servers, we will receive this not synchronized notification here, which means the device does not translate any sessions at all. So I schedule sessions equals 0 here and here as well. This is just to protect the data from being overwritten. So if you would like to restore the HA environment automatically without like doing any manual steps, you will just need to bring online the second node. Yeah, sometimes there are situations when you are just not being able to bring up the second server. In this case, if you really need the production to be up and running now, and the second server just like doesn't start up at all. In this case, you can obviously mark this device as synchronized, and after that your production will be up and running, and this device will begin translating sessions, translating scheduled sessions. So after that, when you will bring the second server eventually online, it will synchronize with the first one using the first server as the source for synchronization. So this step should be only done in case if you're totally sure that you are not losing any data, in case if both servers go down simultaneously. In case if you have any concerns that the first server doesn't hold the recent data, you can just double check in the event logs just to compare time when the servers gone down, on just like to double check that really those servers were shut down in the same time, so they have the same data, and you can just start this without any further ado. But in case if you have some concerns, it's really better to try to bring up the second server, to bring up the second StarWind service and let the StarWind automatically synchronize each side. Okay, so basically this is just the common blackout situation, and we are not going to mark those devices synchronized, as we have the second server pretty much healthy. It's just shut down. Okay, so we're going to our physical host and we'll bring the second server online. Also, the order in which you're going to bring the servers online, it really doesn't matter in this case. So you can start with the second one, you can start from the first one, it really doesn't matter because StarWind will do this automatically after both servers are up and running. So you're not risking to lose any data or compromise data consistency or any other bad stuff. Okay, something's happening. So as you can see right now, StarWind service has started on the second server, and immediately it began automatic synchronization with the first server. Obviously, this will be full synchronization, as in case of the power off, StarWind is not being able to gracefully shut down its services and to preserve the data to save the actual time frame of the last packet transmitted. So due to that, it will do the full synchronization with the partner just in order to ensure the data consistency. Yeah, actually, meanwhile, we can try and connect to our cluster as our witness drive looks healthy and already synchronized. So let's go to the failover cluster manager. And check what's happening here. And as you can see, our cluster is already up and running. And both storages are online, as we already have the first server synchronized. Oh, actually, the second one is synchronized as well. So also speaking about the full synchronization in this case, you should not really worry about it at all, because since the second server is already up and running and receiving data from the first one, the devices on the first server will become synchronized. So both witness and your CSV drives will be synchronized, and this means that you can connect to them from the failover cluster, you can reach them from your virtual machines, and your virtual machines can be actually started after this. So basically that's it. That's how the basic troubleshooting after blackout looks. And this is a good time for your questions. So should you have any concerns or something is not really clear in this scenario, or probably you have some like kind of alternative scenarios that we probably can simulate right now, just drop it into the question box and I'll try to answer. Yeah, this awkward moment while waiting for your questions. Probably I should have turned some kind of the nice music in the background. Okay, and we have the first question. In which case StarWind does not automatically synchronize after total blackout? So speaking about this this case when you turn on both servers and for some reason each StarWind node has the devices in not synchronized state, this happened a couple of builds ago, a couple of StarWind versions ago, and this actually was the case when two nodes just like crash in the same time. So basically that was the case that I just showed you. Now in the latest versions such situation happens really rare. So in this case when StarWind will not automatically synchronize after the blackout, and you just see that like a couple of minutes are passed and the both services up and running, the servers are healthy and up and running as well, and StarWind is still not synchronizing, you can basically just mark one of the devices. For example, like if you have the same situation but still receive not synchronized here, you can select any of the device because they have the same data, the servers crashed in the same time, and just mark them as synchronized, this grayed out option here. After this, StarWind will forcefully prepare the synchronization using the device which you have marked as the source device. So once again, this happens really rare. I cannot tell you exactly why it may happen. It may also happen, like I believe, I assume that this may happen when you have not really like two servers interconnected port to port between each other, but if you also have a couple of switches between them. So it may happen when you lose all the networking connections and after that StarWind services just crashed. So in this case, to avoid split brain scenario, to like ensure the 100% data consistency, StarWind may unsynchronize the devices and let the administrator to choose which device should be synchronized manually. But once again, in the latest builds, this situation like happens really rare. Yeah, indeed. So once again, the question from actually the answer from Rolf regarding the previous one. It looks like you have changed the behavior in the latest build dramatically. Yeah, and once again, that was the case in the earlier versions. So version 6, for example, or earlier versions of the StarWind V8. Such a situation when two nodes are unsynchronized, it happens a lot. And like right now, it's been revamped a bit. So right now you will not notice such kind of stuff. And another question from Alvaro. Imagine that you have failure in both servers. How do you know which server do you have to start? So like probably I've told already before that it really doesn't matter which server to boot up firstly, because it will perform the automatic synchronization just when two servers are up and running already. And in case if you like eventually trapped into these situations when two nodes are unsynchronized, you can just double check the event logs, the system logs, and just identify the time when was the last message, when was the system message that unexpected shutdown was happened, and just to compare them on each server. And after that you can decide what server to mark as synchronized and what server to left as synchronization partner. Is it possible to monitor that via email? So you can actually configure the email notifications in StarWind, and it will tell you when you lose synchronization, for example. So that's one way, but I prefer to actually configure the custom scripts. So there are really large number of solutions that monitor the overall hardware and software health. For example, the VM1 monitor, the really great piece of software. It also had the free edition. I'm not really sure if it supports the email notifications in free edition, but still it worth a try. I know that the paid version of VM1 monitor is like really capable of notifying whether the server just unexpectedly shut it down, or whether it just hanged up, or probably you have insufficient amount of RAM on the server, or the capacity is like lower than some threshold. So this is really, I think it's better to use some specialized software to monitor such situations at the health status, at the like power on status of the servers, and so on. So StarWind is more of like, StarWind can tell you when the device is unsynchronized, but it will not tell you exactly when the server is shut down. Another question from Rolf. Does the Microsoft failover cluster start automatically if you have only one node alive and mark it as synchronized as you showed previously? So actually, yeah. So unfortunately, we have just like 10 gigabyte device, so it's just synchronized really fast. So I just like did not have enough time to show you that cluster is already up and running. There are a couple of settings in failover cluster itself, which is related to the quorum settings and to failover settings. Basically, there is a thing called node majority, which indicates the minimum number of nodes alive that is basically allowing the failover cluster to come up online. And by default, this number is 2, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the main point. Basically, with just one node alive, you will not be able to enter the failover cluster. So you can bring up the second node, and at this point you will be able to enter failover cluster. Also, failover cluster may be not showing online if the witness drive is dead, like on both nodes. It's not synchronized, or it's just like you just like deleted it. So if witness drive is missing, you may not be able to access the failover cluster as well in some occasions. So basically what is needed in order to enter the failover cluster is boot up just one server. If you do not have the possibility to boot up another server, you can forcefully mark the witness drive as synchronized and the CC drive as synchronized, and after that you will be able to reach your cluster, because it's having the connection to the witness drive already, and it will be able to basically show online. So that's how it's done. Another question, what is the probability to have my VMs corrupted in case of blackout and raising up only one host? So in case of power failure, usually like this is the total physics, so two servers just losing the power at the same time, and the probability that there were some like data packet that does not reach the first server while reaching the second one is really low. In this case, you will not get like your VMs corrupted. You probably may get some documents that people were working with in this very moment. They may get corrupted. But speaking about the VM corruption, I think just like I've never saw something like that. Probably may happen when you have configured the hardware write-back cache on your RAID controller and the battery on RAID controller failed and you have the blackout. So after the set of circumstances, it may happen, but it's really kind of, you need to try hard to corrupt your VMs in case of blackout. And speaking about the StarWind side, we also have the L1 cache in write-back mode. Which is usually synchronized between nodes, but in case of blackout and like simultaneous shutdown of the both StarWind hosts, this is the data that you can possibly lose. Actually, you will lose this data in write-back cache that is currently on it. So our L1 cache in write-back mode, it has an algorithm to automatically flash the data when it detects the gentle shutdown of the server, when it detects the stop of StarWind service. And in case if it just like lose the power and server just like gone dead underneath, you will obviously lose the data in this write-back cache. That's why I really recommend to have at least one like small redundant power supply connected to at least one of the StarWind servers to ensure the consistency of the StarWind cache. So in this case, nevertheless, like the second server going down, you will still have a couple of minutes to gracefully shut down the first server and to keep your data consistent. Another question from Michael: how long is the maximum distance between StarWind servers to synchronize properly, distance or latency, etc.? So actually our minimal requirements is the great example where you can check this data. And if you have your StarWind servers located in the same data center, it's recommended to keep them under the 2 milliseconds latency. And it's pretty simple given that they're in the same building. And in case if you have your StarWind clusters or nodes distributed between several data centers, between several buildings, for example, in this case, you may have up to 5 milliseconds latency. Moreover, I saw really extreme cases when data centers were on the really very long distance. For example, one was in France, if I'm not mistaken, and the second one was somewhere near La Manche, I believe, the southern Great Britain or something like that. So really pretty big distance, and still they were able to do the synchronization. This particular client was not really requiring any performance from the setup. It will just it was an example of kind of the redundant file server for some text data. And in this case, it pretty much StarWind did the job okay. So it really depends on your particular deployment scenario. And this is actually a great question to our pre-sale department, and you can answer, I mean, you can ask this question just to me personally or call our sales, and probably I can assist you with it. So I really need to check your particular case in order to guarantee you that the distance or latency will do the job in your case. Okay guys, so do you have any other questions? Because as far as I can see, there are nothing new popping up in the question box. Okay, that's great. So I believe we can finish our today's step room, and once again, thank you very much for attending, and it was my pleasure to answer your questions. And I really wish you a great day and also great weekends, if you have a weekend tomorrow. Okay, see you.